On this Tuesday night, summer festivals on the islands are in jeopardy as Lake Ontario water levels hold steady.
It's a little gut-wrenching. You've got a lot of people to talk to and sort out and try to figure out how best to respond.
The popular Dragon Boat Race Festival, just one of several events that could be affected. Plus,
I think it will be better to ride, like I'll feel more safe at least.
Mississauga wants to encourage more two-wheelers. The city is looking at installing its first protected bike lanes. And the Toronto Raptors are in the Sunshine State, but it's no vacation. Game 3 against the Warriors goes tomorrow. Good evening, I'm Mike Wise. If you have any plans to attend an event on the Toronto Islands in the next month, you may want to check to see if they're still on. Well, you can still take a ferry to visit. The city is canceling special event and picnic permits for the next month. As Ali Chiasson tells us, the annual Dragon Boat Race Festival will find out later this week if it can still go ahead.
The Toronto International Dragon Boat Festival is a big deal and a big event.
There are about 4,000 athletes and thousands and thousands of spectators, both from the Dragon Boat community, but also especially from the Chinese community here in the city and across southern Ontario that come to the island.
Event organizer Aaron Soroka got an email yesterday afternoon from the city's Parks Department. It said parts of Toronto Island Park are still impacted by flood, and they should start thinking about an alternate location.
Do you have a plan B?
At this stage, no.
The race is next Friday.
It's a little gut-wrenching. You know, it's crisis management.
What kind of loss is that financially?
Potentially fairly significant for us, extremely significant for the Toronto Chinese Business Association.
But also the hotels that have been booked, the water taxis that rely on big island events happening when they're supposed to.
So we just pulled up in a water taxi. Have a look at Olympic Island. It's going to be off limits to the public until September. It's a popular lookout point with picnic benches and Muskoka chairs. But as this sign suggests, right now it just looks like open water.
So far, the city has kept its promise not to close the entire island in case of flood. Mitigation measures are working for the most part.
As you can see, these sandbags aren't really doing much anymore. They've completely soaked through. And behind me, you have Center Island theme park rides going on as if everything is normal. Now we're on the side of the island where the Dragon Boat Race is supposed to happen. Their grandstand is partially underwater, but event organizers are convinced that they can still make this work. They're going to be back here on Thursday to reevaluate the situation with the city.
The situation, if I can say so, is that fluid.
Any event happening between now and July 1st is at risk.
In all cases, we will work with specific event organizers to figure out how we can either relocate their event, reschedule the event, or in worst case scenarios, we would have to cancel those events. But again, those are day-to-day, event by event type decisions that will need to be made.
At this point, we're moving ahead as planned, building the race schedule, everything's booked, and it's just wait and see until Thursday, and we'll find out. Big day.
Yeah. Fingers crossed for you.
Thank you.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
And flooding is a key focus of Toronto's new climate change plan released today. In recent years, we have seen entire streets submerged in water after sudden, intense downpours, something we should get used to, according to experts.
I like to refer to the consequences of that as a global wetting, and that is the idea that there's more water than we can handle, and we need strategies and adaptations to try and handle the higher frequency and the higher magnitudes of water.
As part of the city's new resilience strategy, it is pushing for better data collection to help people in flood-prone areas predict and prepare for flooding. It also stresses the need to find new and better ways to prevent shoreline erosion and protect people living in basement apartments. Colin Kennedy's here with a first look at the forecast. We may have rain in the forecast tomorrow. Stop me if you've heard that one before.
Yes, we do. Here we go again, right, Mike? We've got more rain in the forecast. We all know how it's felt in terms of it being a cold and wet spring, but just to even spell it out for you, I've got a comparison here. So when you look at the blue line, that would be what our normals would be in terms of how much precipitation we have each month. And this is for the first 5 months of the year, since we're just barely into June. And this is where 2019 has been, way above. In fact, the last 2 months, us picking up nearly 100 millimeters of rainfall. So way above normal. We can show you another way, and that is that on average for these first 5 months, we should have just under 300 millimeters, and we're approaching 4. So if you do the math, more than 100 millimeters above average in terms of the amount of precipitation. So in those earlier winter months, that would be snow and rain mixed. The last few months, obviously, just coming as rainfall. And then we're going to add insult to injury. Now, tomorrow morning, there might be the odd isolated shower. That is possible, but primarily we're going to see into the later afternoon and evening hours, not only some heavier downpours, especially just to the north of the GTA, but some embedded thunderstorms here, and that's why we could also be seeing some strong winds at times as these pass through. Then a few isolated showers Wednesday night into Thursday morning, that potential there, but primarily will start to dry out after that. I can't wait to show you the 5-day forecast. For now, though, overnight tonight, 13. And tomorrow, especially in the afternoon hours, watch out for some heavier rains coming through, a little thunder and lightning possible, but the high 21 degrees, Mike.
All right, thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Bike lanes in Mississauga aren't that common. Even though the city has plenty of wide streets, many cyclists often feel like they're not welcome to share the roads. But the city wants to change that by putting in its first ever protected bike lane. Natalie Nanowski has the details.
These guys will tell you, going for a bike ride in Mississauga isn't easy.
There's not enough infrastructure.
Half of the time, it's so scary that I don't even ride on like roads. You ride on sideways.
Sure, the roads are wider than in Toronto, but without visible bike lanes, drivers get confused when cyclists come into the picture.
So we have a lot of gaps in our current network, and I think that reflects sort of the amount of people riding today. We are seeing growth in the number of people cycling in the city. It's roughly doubled between 2011 and 2016.
The city wants to get more people out of their cars and onto bikes, but admits the streets need to be redesigned.
This is what most of the bike lanes in the city look like, just a little bit of paint separating cyclists from the busy road. But the city of Mississauga wants to change that by creating more segregated bike lanes.
It's all part of the city's cycling master plan. Many of the bike lanes it wants to build will look like the ones in Toronto that have some type of barrier. The first stop is 3.5 kilometers along the College Way, and that's what people in this room came to discuss.
I would like to see cycling treated as a viable alternative mode of transportation.
There's a lot of trips in Mississauga that are 5 kilometers or less in distance, and about 82% of those are taken in cars. So that's a great potential.
The College Way lane is still in the planning phase. By 2045, the city hopes to have 900 kilometers of bike lanes built. Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Mississauga.
The Ontario Chamber of Commerce is warning the province about what might happen if it pulls out of its deal with the beer store. Well, the Chamber says it wants to see a modernized approach to beer sales. It warns ripping up the contract could hurt investment in Ontario. Lorenda Redocop explains.
The issues around selling beer and wine keep bubbling up for the government. The beer store's contract to sell alcohol in grocery stores doesn't run out for another 6 years. Today, it's the Ontario Chamber of Commerce raising the alarm, usually a supporter of the government.
And tearing up a contract in the middle, whether you love it or hate it, is not a good sign to businesses small and large in Ontario and outside of Ontario that Ontario is truly open for business.
The Chamber sent a letter to the Finance Minister and says there could be big implications.
We've been hearing from businesses, not just in the alcohol space, but in forestry, in tourism, because protecting contracts affects all businesses.
People have already warned that canceling the contract could cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and compare it to scandals under the Liberal government.
It's irresponsible, it's wrong-headed, and it's something that is quite duplicitous of the finance minister, who was against this when he was in opposition, and now he's doing the exact same thing as a minister.
Isn't it time we put people ahead of profits for beer sales?
This comes after a coordinated move on the weekend by the PC party, with MPPs tweeting photos and videos from convenience stores, designed to build support for the plan, but it was met with criticism online. Today, the finance minister fought back.
Nowhere else in the world does a government give the biggest beer company special privileges at the expense of consumers and the rest of the industry.
Later, he appeared to dismiss the chamber's concerns.
The Ontario Chamber of Commerce should join us in supporting consumers, supporting businesses, and in supporting our craft brewers.
The legislation is expected to pass on Thursday. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, it's Game 3 tomorrow night for the NBA Finals. This one sees the action shift to Northern California, with the Raptors taking on Golden State in Oakland. That's where we find our Greg Ross tonight.
When players met with the media today, a lot of the talk was about injuries, and particularly injuries to players on the Golden State Warriors. Players like Kevin Durant, who has yet to play in this series. In fact, he hasn't played since the second round of the playoffs with a calf injury. Now, the Warriors are still hoping to get him back into the lineup at some point for this series, but now they find themselves dealing with another injury to a key player in Klay Thompson, who left Game 2 early and was later seen in the tunnel with an ice pack on his thigh. Today, Coach Steve Kerr addressed the injuries to his players.
Kevin won't play tomorrow, but he's ramping up his exercise routine, his workouts. And Klay is day-to-day, so he's questionable. And Loon is out, for the series.
No changes to the Raptors lineup for Game 3, but that doesn't mean they don't have players who are playing through pain. Kawhi Leonard talked about that today as he met with the media. Here's a guy that we've seen limping around the court at times throughout the playoffs. Today he says it's that time of year when you just have to play through it.
Right now it's possible 5 games left and, about 12 days. If you could run, really. I mean, if you can't run, then you're not going to be able to play. That's how you pretty much measure things at this time. You might be able to start the game off running, but then you might not be able to, finish as good as you started just from fatigue and, whatever is bothering you at that time.
Obviously, this is an exciting time for Raptors fans. In fact, we've seen many of them who have made the trip here to the Bay Area to watch these games. In fact, we caught up with one couple who was here for both Games 3 and 4 after the husband convinced his wife that this would be a good way to spend their 35th wedding anniversary. That's supposed to be the gift you give on your 35th wedding anniversary, Raptors tickets?
It's a modern generation.
I mean, the traditional one is coral.
I think I'm going to change it to Raptors tickets or shoes, or both.
Myself growing up, I was a big Warriors fan, and now with the Raptors, so this is an ideal.
Oh, wait a minute, you were a big Warriors fan.
Well, I was, I loved it. I got Rick Barry, I got his autographed sweater in my basement of the house.
So this was before the Raptors.
Yeah, this is what I was, I'm a pretty old guy, so this is when I was a youngster.
Brent calls this a dream matchup as a longtime Golden State Warriors fan, but somebody who's come to love the Raptors as a Torontonian. Now, he says he's actually pulling for the Raptors in this series, but he says if the Warriors were to win, it wouldn't be all that bad. Greg Ross, CBC News, Oakland.
This will be the future main entrance to the Eglinton station at the Crosslinks project.
If you think crews have been busy above ground working on the new Eglinton Crosstown station on Yonge, just wait until you see the huge job they have before them underground. That's coming up next. 3 men convicted in the shooting death of a 17-year-old at a West End Pizza are now serving life sentences. The boy's family read emotional victim impact statements in court today and say that they are pleased with the sentences.
We feel, I would not say elated, but some sort of victory is there, and our hearts are not as heavy as it was yesterday or 2 years ago or 2 years and 7 months ago.
Gerald Hegley was shot multiple times after the men burst through the doors of the pizza shop on Weston Road back in 2016 and started shooting. Muhammad Ali Noor and twin brothers Shakil Shah and Lanil Shah were all convicted of first-degree murder last month. Today, a judge sentenced the three to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. Well, a very tricky and a very complicated part of the Eglinton Crosstown construction is about to get underway, and it involves a first for Toronto. Crews will be digging a tunnel underneath the Line 1 subway tracks, all while the subway trains above continue to operate. As you can imagine, this leaves little room for error. Farah Morale got a close-up look today at just what is involved.
When most people think about the construction of the Eglinton Crosstown, they think of this: lane closures and overground construction. But some of the most complicated work is actually happening underground. So what are we looking at right behind us here?
What you're looking at here, this will be the future main entrance to the Eglinton station at the Crosslinks project. Eglinton Station is one of the interstage stations that basically connects the existing Eglinton subway on the Yonge Line to the new Crosslinks project.
That involves building a tunnel and digging, lots of it. You can see excavation is well underway, that huge pile of dirt behind me. The team says they're actually moving 100 truckloads of that dirt out of here every day.
So on the west side here, there's 2 tunnel boring machines, which was used to actually create the original tunnels. Part of our responsibility will be to excavate and extract those.
In about a month's time, the construction team is going to start what's the most complicated part of this entire project. It's called underpinning, and it's essentially building a bridge underneath another bridge to support the subway. It starts with these 6 huge support piles, which were brought in last year. They were drilled 40 meters down to support the weight of the tunnel and the subway trains running on Line 1. Steel girders will be installed to cradle the trains, and a path will be excavated underneath to further support everything. It's repeated 5 more times to make sure the weight is distributed properly. After that, crews will dig deeper to build the concourse level, as well as the platform where the LRT trains will run to. Here's where things get tricky. If during that process they shift the subway tracks as little as 3 millimeters, that's about the width of a grain of rice, it could cause problems.
If there is a slight shift in 3 millimeters, there will probably be a bit of a slowdown to the subways, out of the station itself.
This underpinning process starts in July and it'll take about 4 months. As if building a bridge under a bridge isn't complicated enough, this is all going to be happening while the subway trains are still running. So not a whole lot of room for error here. Farah Morale, CBC News, Toronto.
Big cities across Canada, perhaps, where this may not happen. In schools where this may not happen. In places of work where this may not happen. So we fly the flag here until everyone can fly those flags everywhere.
The City of Toronto raising the rainbow and transgender flag today, proclaiming June as Pride Month. Members of City Council join members of Pride Toronto to celebrate. Both groups saying they'll work together to help the city become more LGBT friendly. We'll be right back.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
The Blue Jays hoping to snap a 6-game losing streak against the Yankees tonight. They're down 2-0 when they bite back in the 5th versus Randall Grichuk with his solo shot to center. And then 3 batters later, a man on for Freddie Glavis, who lifts one to right center. And still in the 5th, Vlad Guerrero Jr. rips a 2-out single through the infield. That scores Eric Sogard from second. Jays hold on to a win tonight, 4-3. Colette is back with her extended forecast. I can't wait to see what's in store after we get through this rain tomorrow.
Yeah, we got to get through Wednesday, and at least Wednesday the temperature starts to respond, getting closer to seasonal for this time of year. But after that, we not only see the temperatures looking good, but we get into some drier and quieter conditions as well. Now, overnight tonight, a few scattered, isolated showers, really not out of the question, but primarily we're going to find that what happens is through the day tomorrow, especially into the afternoon and early evening, that's when we have the greatest chance for seeing a punch of some thunderstorms coming through. So again, we could get some heavier downpours, so locally some heavier amounts. That will move through and become much more isolated in the overnight, Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Cloud cover early, but then that will erode as well. It will set us up for the second part, or much of Thursday, actually looking pretty good with sunshine. And we're going to hang on to that sunshine for a few days. So really nice potential. We just have to watch out. Tomorrow afternoon, early evening commute could be a slower one, so you want to allow a little extra time there because of the wet roadways. Now, overnight tonight, again, we could have the odd shower, not looking at much here, though, really. 13 to 15 for the overnight lows. Then tomorrow afternoon, nice to see these temperatures getting back on track. Couldn't get out of the teens today. So some low 20s, we have that potential too. And by the way, some of the sunshine we may see through the mid part of the day will just enhance that risk of seeing those thunderstorms a little later on. But then we carve out a nice clearing trend, and that's why Thursday, 22, and it's just early in the day that we could see a few little wet spots, but not much expected there. Friday, all kinds of sunshine, high pressure building in, the temperature looking good as well. Seasonal this time of year is about 22. So hey, we finally get ahead of the game there. 24 degrees into Friday. Saturday, sunshine at 25. Now, Sunday looks like it could be a little bit breezier. I brought in a little more cloud cover. Also about a 30% chance that we could see some showers. It's still a few days out, but at this point, it's looking like a pretty good weekend that we're going to have, Mike.
I'm just focusing on the Friday and Saturday and liking those temperatures. Thanks a lot, Colette.
Yeah, me too. You're welcome.
Still to come, how one long-suffering Leafs fan is dealing with his anxieties from the Ballard years using Lego. We'll explain after the break. Even though the Leafs' playoff run ended far too soon this year, these are much better times to be a hockey fan in this city, especially when you think back to the Harold Ballard years of owning the Leafs. Well, now one fan from out west is illustrating those stories using a combination of Lego and Instagram. Stories like the time Harold Ballard actually came close to taking an axe to a CBC broadcast cable if Hockey Night in Canada didn't pay more to broadcast Leaf games. Joel Kedju says he took his mom's stories of her hatred for Harold Ballard, like this time he banned female sportscasters from the locker room unless they undressed. Well, he took those stories that she hated so much, and then he took his kids' love of Lego, and he built about 100 dioramas illustrating parts of Ballard's life, and he shares them on Instagram. There's the time he called CBC Radio's Barbara Frum a dumb broad who'd said women should not be allowed on radio. That led to protests, as you might expect, protests outside Maple Leaf Gardens. Then, of course, there are the stories of his handling of the team, like when he forced Punch Imlach to trade Lanny McDonald, of course. That was because Daryl Sittler's contract couldn't be touched. That trade, of course, led the team to trash the locker room. Quite a way to relive your Leaf histories. If you want, you can find details about these and links to Joel's Instagram account on our website. There's a story all about this there. cbc.ca/Toronto. Well, that's enough talk about hockey for tonight. Back to basketball, and Metro Morning is going to be checking in with both Mayor Tory and Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf ahead of Game 3 tomorrow night. You can hear them talk about the bets each are placing with each city and what kind of reception Toronto can expect in Oakland. That discussion just after the 8 o'clock news on CBC Radio 1 tomorrow morning. Have a great night. Good luck, Raptors, tomorrow.